This episode of the Oh No 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 podcast is sponsored by Dynamic Industrial Services, the rope access specialists. The roof of the South Stand at Starch Park is some 19 metres above the pitch, the same height as 11 Aidan Connolly's. But as we all know, there's only one Aidan Connolly, and so you'd be much better off with Dynamic Industrial Services. DIS specialise in working at height, offering a range of services including maintenance, inspection and repair. To find out more, visit dynamicindustrialservices.co.uk.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Oh No 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 podcast. My name is Duncan Cameron, and I am back in the host's chair this evening for another bout of red-hot SPFL Premier Sports Cup Group H discussion. We are going to look back at last Saturday's narrow defeat to Ross County. We'll look ahead to the game against up-and-coming fashion house Hamilton Accies, and also have a quick chat about the results required to see the Rovers qualify for the next round. And to help me do that, I have got two stalwarts of this podcast. First of all, we've got Robbie Weir. How are you, Robbie?
Yeah, I'm really good, and I'm glad that you're back hosting. I had a wee streak there of taking the leadership, and I'm just not as suited to it as you.
I enjoyed listening to a lot of those episodes. I think I popped up on one, but yeah, I enjoyed the others.
Positive feedback.
We've got Callum Blythe as well. I nearly said Callum Smith there. No offence, I would have. But Callum Smith would be a bigger get, I think.
A better guess. It's like
yeah, but setting that aside. Still pleased to have you here with us, Callum Blythe. How are you, mate?
The two best Callums involved with Rovers. Although, actually, no, wait, hold on. There's Callum Hannah. There's probably a bunch of others. Let's just ignore that point.
Yeah, a massive shun to Callum Fordyce there.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
There we go. There's another one to go above me in the hierarchy.
Yeah. You're getting really bumped down this list this summer, eh, Callum?
We'll let you say that to his face at some point. So I'd say we will spend a little bit of time on the game last Saturday, but I'm aware that at the point of recording it is 5 days ago now, so I don't think we need to really spend a huge amount of time picking it apart. But Robbie, do you want to just give me your overall kind of reflections on that game up in Dingwall?
Yeah, I didn't get along to the game, but I did. I listened to it, which was a novel way to go about or watching your Saturdays pass by with Davey and Jim on the co-coms, which was great. So yeah, they really really clear about what was happening in terms of the game, and it sounded like it was a very positive effort from Rovers, a lot different to our last trip up to Dingwall, which is naturally going to draw the comparison. But yeah, it sounded like we were absolutely robbed, to be honest. And I think that's the general consensus seems to be that Ross County have played poorly in the game against ourselves and the game against Accies, but they still came away with 2 wins, which is the Premier League club. They'll be delighted about that. But yeah, I felt watching back to the highlights, you can see where the clear sort of development points would be from the back of that game, where we've conceded. Admittedly, the second goal looked very, very unfortunate, and also as well the clear positives to take from it too. Again, I think that with these Premier Cup games, that or Premier Sports Cup, whatever we're calling it nowadays, I think that there's always an element that you don't treat it like pre-season, but there's a lot of points that you pull from it, and no team's the finished article at this point. Whether it's Premier League teams that you see do poorly and get knocked out, or whether you see teams going like Annan seem to always do really well in this competition in the group stages, it feels like, except from last season. And yeah, over the course of a season, they'll maybe be a bit poorer. So yeah, I think there's stuff to take from the competition and the game itself. But yeah, just it was disappointing not to see us get a draw. But look, it's just got to see how next Saturday ends up with the chaos of that final day, or final 2 days.
Yeah, it's funny, the League Cup group stage. It always feels to me like there's a bit of an inverse correlation with it. Seems like the teams that have a stinking group stage seem to go on and do quite well, and then vice versa. I've no evidence for that. That's just the way it feels to me sometimes. And I think the what we've seen with these Ross County games, as you say, against us and against Accies, is just the value of someone like Jordan White. Because
Does my heat. These
like half chances. Even watching the highlights for that Ross County game against the Rovers, there's a handful of sort of half chances for either side, but it's just a big unit who can put his headers away makes a huge difference, and that's what he's done. I think he's at 4 goals in 3 games in this kind of group stage. He's basically dragging Ross County through single-headedly, if that's not too confusing. Callum, what were your thoughts after full time?
It's an improvement considering what happened last time we went up to Dingwall. But no, it's like Robbie was saying, it's like watching the highlights back and hearing the discourse online where it was all like, oh, we deserved at least a point. And it's like looking through the highlights and you could say, we did deserve a point. It was probably like 50-50 between the two sides, could have gone either way. But considering the fact last time we went up there, we lost 4-0, and then there was a 2-1 game at home where we were battered pretty much. It's an improvement, and also it's good to see Lewis Stevenson continuing in his record when it comes to getting assists. He's got the same amount of assists so far, just in these 3 League Cup games as he who shall not be named got last season before he fell off the face of the earth.
Callum, are you recording from a safe house somewhere in Buenos Aires or something? You've been swept off the face of the earth in a new location that you feel safe enough to talk about. I'm as
far away from a small English seaside resort town as possible. Buenos dias.
It's a good point, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, largely I'm saying that because I brought it up previously. But it is a good point. In the last season, the Rovers fullbacks, Liam Dick, 4 assists in something like 48 games or something in all competitions, 42 games, something like that. Ross Millen had 2 before his disappearance, and James Brown with 0 in his however many games, 12 games that he played at the back end of the season. So really, I think that's obviously it's an area for improvement. You're looking for a bit more of a supply line coming from your fullbacks, and you're absolutely right. 2 assists in 3 games from Lewis Stevenson certainly points to...
The only cautionary tale I would spin on that, just to be a bit of a devil's advocate, is that Keith Watson got as many goals as what Ryan Nolan did in the League Cup last season compared to Ryan Nolan the season before. And then we saw how that ended. But yeah, I mean, look, I think that Stevenson's going to be a real asset to the team, and I think the thing that has looked really positive is that you're not going to see a lot of goals like that from Callum Smith this season. Well, you might do, but I'd be very, very surprised if that became a focal point of our attack in terms of Callum Smith headed goals. But what it does show is that we've got someone that can deliver the ball into the box, into danger areas in Stevenson. And I touched on this before, I think it was after these Fife game, I sort of said that there was... Stevenson's the type of player where you'll see that bit of experience where maybe others will try and take it down the wing a bit. He was not hesitating to be about 45, 40 yards from goal on the wing.
I was just going to make that point where it's like usually it's when it's like either level of the box or like just outside of it, whereas he's doing it 5 or 10 yards early, and that's probably like that experience he has from playing at a higher level.
I think it's kind of 2 points on that. First of all, I think Callum Smith's due an awful lot of credit for that header, because one of the things with sort of crossing from deep like that is that the centre halves have got time to sort of watch it come in. You know, that they're not turned before they're defending the way they would want to, and he still manages to get between them, gets head on it, and put it in the back of the goal. But I agree with what you're saying about Lewis Stevenson. The thing that struck me mostly, it was the first half at Fourth Bank when he was kind of right in front of us. It's just very. I mean, it sounds like the most minor thing possible to credit someone with, but he's very deliberate in what he does, and just in the sense that, especially at our level, you see a lot of the fullbacks, and you think, you kind of label them an attacking fullback, but really they've kind of got one weapon in their arsenal. Like, he'll overlap and just do that like every single time. He's happy overlapping. Whereas Lewis Stevenson is just very, very happy to kind of do it all in terms of, in that first half, he would overlap, he would underlap, he'd come inside, he'd put crosses in from deep, and he's very deliberate, and when he's doing any of those, he's fully committed to it. It's not like he's having to come inside as a plan B or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's such an advantage for him, but it's also a huge advantage for someone like Dylan Easton playing in front of him as well. And you see the benefit of that kind of interlink in all of these group stage games, really.
I was just going to say that it does look like him and Dylan Easton have a really good understanding, because it was Easton that's automatically fed the ball out wide to him, and they linked up at Stirling for those goals. So yeah, it's really positive to see. But just to go back to Callum Smith, I did put in the sort of group chat and all sort of speculated on him overall. Like, I do wonder if he's going to maybe have a breakout season this season. He scored a lot of goals last season in terms of like where he was at, because he rotated between being a winger and a forward. But I do wonder if we're going to keep him more as a forward now, and to sort of have him. It's really hard to say whether, like, if you were to pin a figure on how many goals he could potentially get this season. Like, I know that he's going to be in rotation with sort of Jack Hamilton and Lewis Vaughan, but it does feel like we've got our wider players now, in the sense that we've got Connolly, Mullen, and obviously Lewis Gibson as well out there, who can all rotate between positions, and you're kind of knowing what to expect in that. And you've got Smith that can also go out there as well. So you do kind of wonder if he hits the ground running, Smith, if that's going to maybe change our sort of direction that we go at, because at the moment there's been we'll come on to transfer talk a little bit later in the episode, but all the talk seems to be about like, we need a new centre forward, but maybe there is a sort of discussion there to be had about, like, if we can utilise Callum Smith, and he is only 24, being able to get the best out of him in that centre forward position, does that change the discussion into being, do we maybe look towards getting wingers in? And then that sort of changes the market that we're going for, because the centre forward market at the moment is absolutely brutal. It's very hard to see where players are coming in from in that respect. I know that we've had a few links, but I think that it's always a market that's difficult to crack, because everyone's going to be after a 20-goal striker. And you either end up like Airdrie, where you get a lad coming in from the outside who looks like he could be the real business, or then you're looking down the Greenock Morton route, where you're signing players from England and Wales that don't look the business. So yeah, very interesting to see how the next few weeks pan out on that front.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it will be interesting to see. Callum Smith, maybe it's sort of a bias in that you remember the goals more than you remember the misses, but it feels to me like Callum Smith's finishing and his kind of finishing rate is pretty decent. It feels like he takes the chances that he gets. And then a large part of being a centre forward is being in the right place, and it's creating the chances as much as anything. But it does feel like, he is a better finisher than I think maybe some people would credit him with. So, yeah, not at all surprised to see that he's... obviously he's getting game time at the moment, but doesn't feel like a plan B, in the sense that I don't think Ian Murray's like, we're at a disadvantage because we're having to play Callum Smith up front. Like, I don't think it's like that at all. And hopefully he can add another couple over the next couple of weeks, and as you say, really kind of hit the ground running as we're kind of into the first quarter of the league season. Anything in particular, Callum, you kind of want to pick up on either of the goals that we conceded at all? Anything, your patterns or concerns or anything jumping out to you from those?
Not really. It was just sort of it's just sort of those goals that happen. It's like the second one was just really unlucky. It just sort of bounced off of Murray, I think it was, and just ended up falling at the feet of whoever it was that scored that second goal for County. Not really anything to worry about. And again, it is a Premiership team that we were playing against. It's a level above. That's the level we need to be aiming at. And considering, like I said earlier, it was 4-0 last time, so keeping it close, keeping it to a point where we're feeling we should have got at least a point is pretty good. Of course, it's like with this League Cup group stage, you're alluding to it as well, where it's sort of like it's like this weird middle ground between competitive and pre-season, where it's sort of like if you do well, great. If not, then okay, what can we learn from this? Pretty much.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad you said that about that second goal because I agree entirely. It's a little bit of criticism's maybe a bit too strong, but it's kind of aimed at Kieran Freeman, who goes to block the first effort from George Harman at that second goal. I think he's really, really unlucky with where the second one ends up. I think it's what you want is for that first shot to be blocked, and he's blocking it, at source. Yeah. He's right on Harman's toes, and it's just really unlucky that it drops right on him, like basically falls onto his toes again. I don't think there's too much more you could ask of Kieran Freeman with that. I think you play that instant again 20 times and that ball goes in 19 different directions. I just think he's quite unlucky with that. There was nothing for me from those 2 goals conceded where I, kind of suck my breath in through my teeth and just shake my head at it. It's kind of fine, really. Robbie, anything from you on the goals that we conceded or indeed anything else from that game?
For the goals, the first one's frustrating. It's a free header, and nobody's going to be more frustrated than the 2 centre backs that they've got on the pitch at that point as to sort of when they see that flying into the net. And yeah, Jordan White just annoys me. Just really annoys me. Just that type of player again. Another player that will probably score goals against us. He's got that daft art celebration that does my box in. I've seen too many photos of the playoffs where he's doing it, looking really smug. And yeah, as you say, Duncan, I fully agree. Second goal, I don't think you can fault Freeman at all. He's done his job, and then it's just been very, very unfortunate. Yeah, I think that looking forward, there's not really much that you can take from it other than that we were exceptionally unlucky, and that again, as Callum's touched on, the gap's a lot closer now. I think that County are a lot weaker team with the likes of Simon Murray and Jan Danda in there. It wasn't nearly as comprehensive as what the playoff games were, but I'm sure County will feel that they'll strengthen over the course of the season. But yeah, it's I think that overall that there's a lot of reason, even from the early stages of these League Cup matches. I know that it's been a big discrepancy in who we've played against so far. Played 2 games against 2 League teams, 2 League 2 teams. A bit of a mouthful to say that one, and then a Premiership club. So I think the real test will be next Saturday against Accies. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how that one pans out against a team that are going to be at our level. That are probably looking very similar in market to us in terms of players, in terms of spending money, and seeing how that one goes.
Yeah, let's move on to Accies then. Now, from a Rovers point of view, the other thing sort of coming off the back of the County game was late injuries to Ewan Murray and Scott Brown. I haven't seen any update of any description since then. So you can really read whatever you like into that. Either it's incredibly minor or it's, something that might cause them to miss this game, and the Rovers are just keeping it under their hats to keep John Rankin and co guessing. But that could potentially sort of change things around. But to stick to the Rovers before we kind of move into Hamilton themselves, Callum, is there anyone in particular that you would be looking to start this one? Anyone you think might come in that hasn't had too many starts in the games prior to now?
I don't think so. I think we'll go with the same squad as what we took up to County, because I feel like that was, barring Hanlon obviously not being available, I feel like that's our best 11. And of course, we're playing against a championship team. That's who we're going to be competing against a further 4 times this season at a minimum. So you want to get a gauge going into the league season as to how our best 11 performs against a side like Hamilton, because even though, as originally I was going to have Accies nailed on to being like that sort of bottom 3, but they signed Ollie Shaw and fucking Todorov, as I like to call him. So be interesting to see how they do now, because I think they'll be clear of the bottom 2. So they'll be mid-table still, I reckon, but yeah, I feel like they'll be not as much as a pushover as I feel like they could have been before this group stage started.
Yeah, I was just looking there, and annoyingly, Nikolai Todorov is available for this.
Fuck.
I was hoping he'd have kicked a ball for Airdrie before he moved, but actually he was on the bench for Airdrie when they hammered East Kilbride 8-0. But he's come off the bench. Reid. Yeah, he's come off the bench against Stranraer and against Ross County. So
at least my Airdrie player from the draft is still at Airdrie, you know.
Aye, yeah, better than
mine. Yeah, so every chance we will see our old friend Nikolai Todorov on Saturday, and actually, sort of reasonably competent business, I think you'd have to call it, from Hamilton up till now. Like, there's nobody in there that you're, wondering, like, how on earth have they done that? But, like, Sean McGinty, Charlie Albinson that have come in from Ayr United, Dara O'Connor as well, kind of Ayr United via Glen Toran. These are, I think you would probably say, championship standard players. They've kind of been the distance and been fine. Ollie Shaw, I don't know. Jury's still out on Ollie Shaw for me, but we'll see. A couple others. Yeah, I'm inclined to say the same. I don't know that Hamilton are going to be quite the car crash that I thought they might be. But by the same token, I don't know that there's anyone in that Hamilton team who's a real kind of standout either. I think they're the kind of team that you would look at and say, like, a good manager could do a fair bit with that team. Like, there's a lot of solid players, and I'm not entirely sure. I think, like most Accies fans, I'm not entirely sure John Rankin's that good a manager. Robbie, what are your kind of impressions from Hamilton so far? And me and Callum both saying maybe not for the destined for the bottom 2. How about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that reasonable acquisitions during the summer business. As I say, Todorov will probably get about like 9 or 10 goals this season. I don't think that's wouldn't be too unreasonable to expect. And I know that he's got a good record against us, but I still don't think it's anyone to feed in particular, even if he does. I mean, he could score against us this weekend, but I don't think he's a player that I ever get trepidation about facing in particular. Sort of like seeing that. I think in particular with us signing Fordyce and having, I know that you spoke about there, you mentioned about like our injury concerns. I think that we usually tend to keep our cards close to our chest when things are pretty bad. So I'll be intrigued to see who he comes up against this Saturday. Kevin O'Hara's he's got a good record against us as well, so he'll be one to keep an eye out on. But yeah, just in general, I think that Accies, a lot of familiar names in there. I know that Fergus Owens had been highly rated centre back. He's also the son of I think it's like the bass player from Aztec Gamera, the Scottish 1980s band. Yeah, he is.
I didn't know that.
But there you go, your Scottish football trivia. But yeah, he picked up a really nasty injury, so he's out. And also as well, I think they're avoiding playing Kyle McDonald for the fact he's on the sex offenders register after an incident in the summer, which was really unsavoury. So yeah, it's one of these ones where defensively, I think they're going to be quite slow. So again, I know that we're going to go into lineups. I would be hoping that we can exploit that using the likes of Callum Smith going ahead into this game and really look at putting a performance. Because Accies don't have anything to play for in this final game. They're in a position where they can only reach 8 points, and I think almost certainly you're going to be looking at teams reaching 9 points and getting through. Us being one of those clubs, potentially, if we win on Saturday. So yeah, I think if it's not us, it's going to be someone else, and Accies are going to have their race is going to be run in terms of the League Cup. So yeah.
Right, so let's have a look at kind of lineups for this one then, and I'm going to start by giving you mine, because I've got a couple of kind of talking points or things to mention on this. So unsurprisingly, it's a 4-2-3-1, and I think probably unsurprisingly, I've left the defence unchanged on the sort of assumption that Ewan Murray's fine and hasn't come out of that game with any kind of issues. Going into the midfield, this one of the things I thought was interesting. From the Stranraer game into the Ross County game, I kind of wondered if you swap the base of the midfields around, we might not have, I don't know if we'd done slightly better, but it felt to me like against Stranraer, I felt like Ross Matthews was a little bit sort of underutilised almost, in the sense that his game is all, as we all know, it's all action, it's getting in people's faces, all that kind of stuff. And instead, we just had loads of the ball, and it's just slightly different to maybe his optimal kind of condition. Whereas against Ross County, where we don't have the ball, and we maybe could have been a bit more in their faces and a bit more all action, you've got Sean Byrne, who's very much about controlling the game and all that kind of stuff, like he did against Stirling Albion, where I thought he was kind of running the show from that base in the midfield. So for me, for this one, I have gone for Ross Matthews again, but I think it'll be interesting more than anything just to see what way Ian Murray goes and how he kind of approaches that in the middle. And then the other sort of point for me is I would quite like to see Lewis Gibson start on this one. So I have gone for Lewis Gibson on the right, and my primary reason for that is what we touched upon before, where it seems like Dylan Easton and Lewis Stevenson are building a really good relationship on that side. So I'd leave that unchanged, try and build that up a little bit more. So Lewis Gibson goes on the right-hand side, and then I've got Sam Stanton as the number 10, and Callum Smith up front, again, for reasons that we've already discussed. Robbie, how about you? How are you lining up your Rovers side on this one?
Yeah, I'm as ever. I'm of the classic Cameron 4-2-3-1 style formation that they stick with. I'm sure Mr. Fleming will be also delighted by that as well. Cameron Fleming 4-2-3-1.
It's not quite Herbert Chapman's WM, but we're getting there.
Well, it's a work in progress, isn't it? So yeah, obviously, as you'd expect, Kevin Dabrowski starts in goals for me. I would continue with Lewis Stevenson at left back. Now, I think the big questions are about sort of centre backs and fitness, because again, as I said before, Rovers are keeping their cards very, very close to their chest in terms of who's going to be available for this game. If they're both available, Murray and Fordyce would be a natural choice, but if not, again, we could potentially see maybe Liam Duncan there. We could potentially have Scott Brown. Both have played there before, so those are options, albeit not ideal. Kieran Freeman, big game for him to be able to come back in and improve a point there. I think that in the heart of the midfield, I think that if we do have Brown at centre back, then you're going with Ross Matthews and Sean Byrne in there. And then going into the final third, then really, as you say, I agree with you. I would keep Easton on the left to sort of continue that partnership with Stevenson, because that's been working really well. And then I would actually change it up on both fronts. So I would have, as you said, on the right-hand side, I would have Gibson, have him cutting in and try to ping off shots, seeing what he can do. And then actually in the number 10 role, I don't know if he's played it too often, but being quite bold, I would actually maybe try Montague in there and see if, because this is going to be the standard opposition that he's going to need to play against in the future. So I think that fortune's going to favour the bold in these types of situations, and there's no reason why he couldn't come in and do a job for us based off what we've seen. I don't think Ian Murray should be scared of using him, and it's a real opportunity for the lad to start a mark. So yeah, I would give him a real opportunity to go in and make an impression in this game. And then up top, I would start with Callum Smith. Again, we saw it against Stranraer. I know it's a League Two side, without being dismissive to them, but you saw sort of Callum Smith getting fed through for the goal, or the one-on-one that he had that he unfortunately couldn't finish. And then you saw his goal on Saturday, and he's generally in the League Cup stages. He's done really, really well in terms of his performances so far. So I would use him for the final game and try and sort of see if we can feed him, because you look at the Accies centre-backs, the likes of Dylan McGowan and Sean McGinty, those two are not quick players. They're very, very meat and potatoes centre-halves, and I feel like if you can get in behind them, then you're going to give them a lot of grief and potentially cause issues. So yeah, that would be my starting 11 going into Saturday.
And Callum, how about you?
Barring any injuries to Murray and Brown, which, seeing as nothing was said, I'd imagine it was just a precaution for them on Saturday against Ross County, where it was possibly just like a slight knock, just not taking any risks. I think it's just going to be the same side as what we played up against Ross County. That's what I feel it is.
I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. I think it's, we don't have a huge squad, and there's not the luxury of making loads and loads of changes. And fundamentally, I think the other thing as well is, there's still, with a little bit of optimism, everything to play for as well. So yeah, I'm not expecting Ian Murray to make loads and loads of changes. And on that point, I did have a bit of a look into the kind of permutations and the required results for this. By which I mean I went to the Pie and Bovril thread that the Dumfries Oracle Skyline Drifter puts together, which is, much like Nary's Topogra for transfers, is an invaluable resource at this time of year. And I'm going to give you my summary of what I think the Rovers' position is. Please don't come for me in the YouTube comments if this is incorrect.
You're going to have a Texan gunning after you. He's in the UK. He's coming for you.
Yeah, so I believe this to be the case, but don't repeat this to anyone with any confidence if you'd like them to.
Advised.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, there are 3 best runner-up spots available. That looks very likely that 2 of those will go if kind of things go to form, because if Airdrie beat Queen of the South at home, as you would expect them to, and if Queen's Park beat Kelty at home, or wherever their home happens to be this week, that would take up 2 of those spots and would only leave 1 with kind of 3 teams gunning for it. So the Rovers are one of those 3, but the others are Ayr United, who are, I believe, at home to Buckie Thistle.
Yep.
And the other is Clyde, and I think, are they at home to Montrose? Which makes it nice and easy. Everybody's at home of the teams who are kind of in the mix for this. Now, because of the goal difference, if all 3 teams win, for the Rovers to go through, they would need to win by a bigger margin than Ayr beat Buckie Thistle, and by 2 more than Clyde beat Montrose. So, effectively, if Clyde win 1-0, Ayr win 2-0, and the Rovers win 3-0, the Rovers would go through. But, yeah, if they're any closer than that, then one of the other 2 teams would go through. So, I think it's fairly apparent there that the big fly in the ointment is going to be Ayr against Buckie Thistle. Buckie have conceded a fair few goals so far in this group. If I was putting money on it right now, my money would be going on Ayr United to kind of go through in that spot. But as we know, and as we've seen this year as well as a lot of the others, the League Cup groups do throw up a lot of funny results. So who knows? I thought it was interesting that Ian Murray, when Graham asked him about it in his pre-match, did actually kind of fess up to saying, like, yeah, if we get a couple of early goals, I'll go and have a look and see what the other results are and see how we're getting on. Which just feels like a very un-football manager thing to say. Generally, it's
Ian
like,
Murray's
we're not bothered. Like,
he's really not like most football managers. So it's like, I know I've referenced it before, but it's like when you see the excerpt from the Rico Katongo case at Airdrie, where he's shouting into a dressing room, calling Jai Katongo, go tweet that, you wee fanny, was it? Or something like that. Brilliant. I love the guy. I think it's fantastic that he's just got this human element to him and that you see these wee bits that he'll get involved with. But yeah, it's I mean, going back to the topic at hand, it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't think anyone's going to be shied away. Albeit not quite as difficult as Hamilton Accies, with the response that I saw on their Twitter where someone says, this is a huge game for us. If we win, we'll take second place and we might be able to go through. They'll only be able to get to 8 points. There is absolutely no chance that Accies are going through. So we've got more of a shout than they do.
Yeah, that's it. It's not statistically impossible. Some years for an 8-point team to get through, it's not going to be the case this year. You'll have teams on 9 points taking the last of the runner-up spots. What I will say though, and this is getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but if we were to beat Hamilton on Saturday but not qualify, I find it very difficult to get kind of worked up about that. We've seen again a couple of comments, one or two people talking about, should have gone and put more past Stranraer, and listen, they had chances in that game, but fundamentally, I think if you're in a group like this, and again, I'm putting an asterisk on this to say one of these hasn't happened yet, but if you beat two League Two sides, you beat the side the same division as you, and then you lose to your Premier League side, fine. Like, that's 2 games you should have won, a game you probably should have lost, and then if you do win the other one that was, against the side in your division, I actually think you have to just look at that and go, like, it's not a bad month's work, really.
I think 9 points is what most people would be expecting.
And see, to jump on the other side of it, think back to last season. So we drew the first game against Dunfermline, and they took the bonus point on penalties, at which point you're thinking, oh, that's our League Cup. That's a disaster. We're probably out the League Cup. We then go to... we play Albion Rovers at home, and we get a late goal from Josh Millen to get a win. So it puts us up to 4 points. We then go to Kilmarnock away, and we draw, and we get the bonus point on penalties to take us up to the 6. And then we go 1-0 up on Annan, 2-1 down to win 3-2. And then we need to go into the final day. Accies at that point, just after we finish against Annan, Accies lose in a penalty shootout. I can't remember who it was against, but if they'd won the bonus point in the penalty shootout, they would have gone through, but they didn't. And then the next day, Dundee were completely hapless against Cali and could only win 1-0, which didn't take them above us on goal difference. That was the luckiest of lucks that you'll see in the League Cup to get us through. So maybe this is just our year where it's on the other side and it's just not worked out for us. And sure, you can look back to the Stranraer game, and even in that game, Dylan Easton hits the bar and Callum Smith whistlers a 1-on-1. There's not really much more that you can do other than that, where I think that you could sort of say, yeah, sure, be a bit more aggressive. But I think at that point, you're still feeling like you come out that game and you think, like, look, 6 points against 2 League Two teams, you've got the job done in terms of points on the board. And I get that goal difference might be a factor, but you're still confident going up against a Ross County team that are severely weaker compared to last season. So yeah, it's I think sometimes your luck's in, sometimes your luck's out. I'm not going to get too upset about it personally. But
You can't legislate for other groups when you've got results like Airdrie putting 8 past East Kilbride. Like, that's out of your control. And
Clyde beating Partick is a perfect example.
Fine. These things happen. It's fine. So that's probably about it for that. The last thing, just to kind of round us off for today, I want to just do a bit of a quick fire on three players whose names have been kind of floating around this week to a greater or lesser extent as kind of transfer rumours, 2 of which Ian Murray addressed in today's paper, and the other one I think is frankly, personally, I think is ludicrous. But anyway, we'll come at him third. But first of all, Robbie, you said that Ian Murray's maybe a little bit more kind of candid than other managers. Maybe a little bit more kind of personality comes through in his interviews. So the Courier asked him today, Ian Collin of the Courier asked him about links to Stevie May. And Ian Murray said that he wasn't previously aware of any links to Stevie May until his own son asked him about it when they were watching Hamilton on Tuesday night, which I like my football rumours getting to the managers through their own family members. That seems like a good way to do it. And
it's
so I think we can probably say, unless there's some real deep backstory misdirection going on there from Ian Murray, there's probably been nothing concrete in that up till now. But give me just your general thoughts on Stevie May as a potential target, Robbie, because Ian Murray didn't actually rule it out for all that.
Yeah, it's look, Stevie May's one of these players where it feels like he's been about forever now. It feels like he's had such a long spell in terms of his career, where he's played for Accies, played for Aberdeen, St Johnstone. He's been all over the place. I did not realise, much like Ian Latto said in our group chat today, when did he shave his head? Like, I was completely unaware of this. And then a photo comes up with a Courier article and he shaved his head. I just assumed it was like Brian May. He just keeps the perm flowing forever. But I think that he's had a lot of injury issues in the past, and it's intriguing to see the way that St Johnstone fans talk about him, because they talk a lot about his work rate, and they say that, like, look, if you're after the 20 goal a season Stevie May that was existing 10 years ago, that was on the verge of Scotland call-ups, you're not getting that anymore. You're going to get a Stevie May that's going to get you a few goals and a few assists, but it's categorically changed. I think the really big question with Stevie May is, how big is the jump between the Championship and the Premiership? Because we've seen players before where they've done it in the top league and then maybe tailed off, or we've seen players that have done it in the Championship, they've gone up and they've not been able to do it. For example, John Baird is a really great example, because each level that you go down, there is an element where there's a drop-off, not in terms of so much as performance, but there's just those slight edges that players have, and it just becomes a little bit more difficult the more leagues that you go up. So yeah, I think it would be an interesting signing, but again, it's very hard to say how impactful it would be and what type of player we would actually be getting. Because I think the expectation in people's heads about it is that they look at the stats that he had when he was scoring goals for fun for Accies at this level, and they might say, oh, we're going to get that player again. I don't think that's going to be the reality. I think you'll still get a decent player, but it's really hard to say. Is that the final piece in the jigsaw? Very difficult to say. But
You'd kind of want him on like a 1 month trial, like let him have 4 Championship games, and I think you'd have a great idea what type of player he's going to be.
Because I mean, even Chris Kane at Dunfermline, that's probably a good example when he plays. Is like just one of those ones where I think he was getting a goal every other game, but like, yeah, you're just at the top flight. He's not really going to do that much, but at this level, he seems lethal. So yeah, it's one of those ones where it's going to be, you really will never know until it actually happens.
Yeah, just briefly on Chris Kane there. There's the Courier again. An article of his latest injury, and it's just the way it's framed. It's unintentional, but it really made me laugh. This is that for pre-season he was following a personalised fitness regime until he injured his ankle in a shooting drill, which it made me feel like this personalised fitness regime is just keeping him as far away from footballs as possible. And the first time they've let him actually near one, it's just like some sort of bone allergy, and he's just collapsed to the ground. Which
I envision Family Guy with Peter falling down stairs and breaking his neck just straight away. That's very much Dunfermline.
Aye, setting aside the kind of Dunfermline of it all, I think we've all seen that before, where you get a guy who you know has the quality, like Chris Kane, when he's fit, is absolutely good enough to play like at the very top end of the Championship, and he will score goals. But it's just that case of like, is it worth taking a gamble if he can't play, if you can't get him onto the park? James Keatings is probably the biggest example who kind of comes to mind for that, where, eventually you take the gamble on him and it's you can't play him, and there was just absolutely no chance of that. Someone who might possibly be in a kind of similar category, albeit the very kind of drastic difference in the injury situation. This week, the Rovers had Dapo Mabude in for training. He was last out in Belgium, where he was in a really serious car crash in January of this year. And it seems like he's kind of doing the rounds a little bit, looking to see if he can get a club who had been with Livingston. And I think he's been spotted down at Gym 64. I got that right?
Correct. Sponsor for training gear. So.
Yeah, so he'd been spotted. So again, someone asked him, Ian Collin asked Ian Murray about him. And he basically said what I just said. He was in for 2 sessions and now it seems to have gone again. Callum, looking at Dapo Mabude's kind of career history and the numbers he's put up so far, did that pique your interest at all when you saw that link? Are you kind of disappointed that hasn't come to anything?
It piqued my interest because he was a fairly regular member of the Scotland under-21s, I feel like he was someone who was fairly highly rated, but it didn't work out for him in Belgium, and of course he did have that car crash where I think he was in a coma.
Yeah.
I think he got put in a medically induced coma, so it would have been interesting to see how that would have turned out, but I mean, if he's not been able to get anywhere with Livingston, he's not been able to get anywhere with us, it'll be interesting to see where he does end up, but it's not something that I'm going to lose sleep over.
I do wonder if Dapo was slightly more inclined to make the trip over to Belgium. Well, I suppose he got there first. Both him and his brother, Deary played for Rangers and then he moved to Manchester City as a youth prospect, and then he made the trip to move to Westerlo in Belgium in 2023. He's back on loan at Bristol City now, so he seems to be the brighter of the two prospects. But yeah, it's
yeah, I think Dapo's got Queen of the South written all over him.
Again,
he played there previously, and I just think it's unless they've changed status over this summer, it's the as low as you can go while still remaining full time. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if he's it's like one last chance at full time football after this car crash.
I do get the feeling that he's going to be the type of player that's going to rock up at a club and he'll either be gone within 6 months or you by a Premier League club taking a punt on him because he's had to get that way back into football, or full on Lowland League vibes. But see what happens.
East Kilbride.
It's a bit like when Simon Murray came back from South Africa and joined Queen's Park in League Two. And you just think, that's, as you say, that's Lowland League within 6 months, or shoots back up again, which obviously Simon Murray's done. There was one more name that was being kind of bandied about in the darker corners of the internet this week. In fact, you know what? Just give me a one-word reaction to this link, please. Callum, what's your one-word reaction to talk of Tony Watt making his way to Starks Park?
Funny.
And Robbie, your one-word reaction to that?
Christ.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you nonsense as my single reaction to that.
I'm going to caveat that. I've said before, I like Tony Watt as a player, and I don't think I think a lot is made of his people talk about his attitude. I've no idea in terms of whether that's true or not. Tony Watt's not going to be moving to us as far as I can see. I would be astonished if that was the case. It looks like it's one that's been started off by a Dundee United fan who's basically just kicked it off, and then it's just grown arms and legs, and then all of a sudden there's people sort of jumping in Tony Watt might be going to Race Rovers. I would, much like Duncan, for audio listeners, shaking his head right now, and I'm going to assume that Callum's the same. It's just, can I see it happening? I would absolutely love it if it did happen. I think that he would score goals, he would create assists, and he would be superb for content, for the socials. But I just think that with the money that he's been on at other clubs, I think he's a certainty to go to a bottom 6 top flight club before he would be coming near us. But
the effect that Tony Watt signing for us would have on Raith Rovers' social media would be the equivalent of the burning of the Library of Alexandria, where the amount of things that would have to get deleted because of what has been said.
Yeah, just a mass revision of.
I have said things about Tony Watt.
An awful lot.
No, you're actually quite sound. Please ignore anything said in the past 12 months.
Yeah. Sincerely.
I quite like your chickens. Please keep your chickens well fed.
Yeah. I seriously doubt we will have to cross that bridge. But if we do, then
I'm here for it if we do. I am 100% here for it if we do. And I know that not everyone's going to be as enthusiastic about it. But for me, I think it would be a really good signing. But I just cannot see it happen. And
it's not happening. We've already given it too much time and too much credence. And so on that note, I'm going to refuse to allow any more discussion of anything at all and bring the episode to a close.
No, you're not.
So
I'm just going to jump in one final point. It's just to say that, thanks to, again, everyone that's contributed through things like for donations through the shop, through our sponsors, DIS, and I know that I'd sort of said about it before in passing, but we have agreed to sponsor Callum Hannah's away shirt. Now, obviously, Callum's away on loan at Montrose now, so we're going to be keeping a keen eye on how he was doing. He almost scored against Edinburgh City the other night, came very close to opening his first senior goal. But I'm sure we'll have a Callum Hannah watch for the podcast going on. I'll keep an eye on his progress and report back on a regular basis. But there was no better way for us to. Our MO has always been to sort of like, what can we give back to the club? Because we are Rovers fans, much like everyone else. We would always be in the position where we want to. Any money that was coming through the shop, we are not going to be greedily lining our pockets. And Blair will be the first person to tell you that the markup from an Etsy shop is not big, but. We aside from things like running costs for the software we use, like Riverside, the most important thing for us was always how we can get back to the club, and there's no better way to do that for us than player sponsorship. So to do it for a lad that's came through Kirkcaldy and Dysart to come on to Rovers, who used to be in the South Stand with the rest of us, is absolutely perfect. So really, really happy that's came to fruition, and was very surprised that we actually got the opportunity to do it in terms of who it is and having that chance to sponsor Callum's away jersey. So brilliant, delighted with it.
We do only have Blair's word that the markup's very thin on that Etsy shop, by the way. It's a very nice bike he's currently cycling around the North Coast 500, but we'll see no more on
500,
that. I can hear Ian Rattle storming along past my flat already to silence you, because he's fed up with this nonsense.
Right, that was very worthwhile, but at the second time, I'm going to bring this episode to a close. So thank you everyone for listening. We will be back presumably at some point over the weekend to review that Hamilton game, and we'll hope to see you then. So in the meantime, you already know all the places you can find us, and if you don't, they'll be in the episode description. So thank you again, and goodbye.